October 22nd, 1910, Bridgeport, Connecticut. The firstborn child of what would end up becoming 5 siblings was born to Reverend Robert G. Higinbotham, the first Presbyterian minister, and Dorothea Schaufer Higinbotham, a member of the Chaldean chapter Daughters of American Revolution, as well as member of the Congregational Church. Although not much is known of the child's early life, what we do know is, despite being born in Bridgeport, he grew up in Caledonia, New York, and despite his parents' close ties to the church, he himself would walk a very different path in life, one that in small part shapes the very world we live in today, one of science, entertainment, and peace. This child's name was William Alfred Higinbotham. This path of his started at the age of 14 when he tried to pick up radio frequency transmissions from the first commercial stations by tinkering with the radio sets. He himself credited this as the spark that would shape the rest of his long scientific life. At 16, he enrolled in a high school physics class where he discovered a natural aptitude for the subject. William continued to follow this path and eventually earned his undergraduate's degree in physics at Williams College, Massachusetts in 1932, before continuing on to Cornell University. Unfortunately for William, this was in the middle of the 1929 to 1939 Great Depression. But despite that, William chose to further his education. To do that, however, he had to take on extra work as a technician in the physics department to pay for his tuition and accommodations. This extra work turned out to be a boon, as to quote the man himself.
This proved to be a lifesaver. I discovered I was very good at electronics.
His gift at electronics, however, would soon end up reshaping the rest of his life. (1941), 3 years into World War II. William was recruited by experimental physicist Robert Fox Batcher to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's Radiation Laboratory. There, he worked on radar devices, as during this time, analog computers were being integrated into the military. William himself designed displays using cathode ray tubes for anti-airborne, shipborne, and land-based military warfare. This changed in 1943, however, when he was once more recruited by Robert Fox Batcher to work at Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico as the head of the lab's electronics group, where they worked on a top-secret military assignment that was later named to Project Manhattan, or more widely known as the atomic bomb.
Can he withstand the temptation to push the button that even now beckons him ever closer? Will he succumb to the maddening urge to eradicate history at the mere push of a single button? Will he hold out, folks? Can he hold out? No, I can't!
In the 80 years since its inception, nuclear weaponry has become humanity's haunting boogeyman, a reflection of our more destructive tendencies pointed back at us that could very well end up ending us all. And that is no far-fetched claim, as weapons exceeding both the number and the destructiveness of those first made have almost been used on purpose and on accident on multiple occasions that would no doubt have resulted in the opposition retaliating in kind, drowning us all in an insane nuclear conflict. Thankfully, so far cooler heads have prevailed, but the underlying threat will always be there, that at any moment we could be dragged into our end due to ego, stupidity, or plain old bad luck. And that's how we feel about nuclear weaponry today. Humanity's guillotine suspended over us waiting to fall, despite the fact that most of us have never, nor will ever see weapons of such destructive scale being used. But what of those who have, who were there during the Trinity test, who had a hand in its creation? July 16th, 1945. Jornada del Muerto. William Higinbotham was one such person among these men during the test explosion of the atomic bomb. He naturally had ethical misgivings about the creation of such a weapon, but was ultimately of the belief that his involvement would contribute towards ending the war. Three weeks later, on the 6th of August, 1945, Little Boy was dropped on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. The resulting explosion wiped out the city center and caused damage as far out as 2.4 kilometers away from the hypocenter. It was estimated that as many as 40,000 soldiers were stationed at Hiroshima at the time, but the resulting devastation claimed as many as 140,000 lives by the end of the year, most of whom being civilians, an utter waste of life. Yet despite it, Japan did not surrender due to their Shinto beliefs of surrender compromising the honor of the fallen. 3 days later, on the 9th of August, 1945, the US dropped a second atomic bomb named Fat Man on the city of Nagasaki, killing an additional 70,000 people. Between the two bombings, as many as 200,000 people died, 30,000 of whom were estimated to be children. Japan's participation in the war ended on the 14th of August, 1945, between the US bombings and the Soviet Union joining the war against them. They had no choice but to surrender. The damage, however, had been done. Damage the scientists who worked on the atomic bomb would get to witness due to photography of the bomb's destruction of Japan. This left its mark on William, who had already lost 2 of his brothers to the war, and now knowing the true scale of what nuclear weaponry could do, vowed to do whatever he could to prevent a nuclear arms race. November 1st, 1945, 88 days after Little Boy was dropped on Hiroshima, William Higinbotham, alongside other scientists who had worked on the atomic bomb program, joined together to form the Federation of Atomic Scientists, later renamed to the Federation of American Scientists, or FAS for short, a non-profit think tank with the goal of restricting the use and creation of nuclear arms, with William himself serving as its first chairman and executive secretary. FAS activities included lobbying, presenting educated lectures, and testifying at official government hearings. The FAS had its first major success with their defeat of the May-Johnson bill that would have given the American military control of nuclear research. In its stead, they helped usher in the McMahon Atomic Energy Act, a civilian commission that would manage the atomic energy policy and the nuclear power development of the United States. This commission formed the Atomic Energy Commission. And despite William's position in the FAS, he joined the Brookhaven National Laboratory that was founded by the Atomic Energy Commission with its own goal of peaceful application of nuclear power. William's reason for joining, as he stated,
looked like the best place for me for what I wanted to do. I wanted to be involved in instruments and also be at an institution that wouldn't complain if I continued to be active in arms control.
And do that he did for 47 years until his retirement in 1984 at the age of 74, but spent an additional 10 years as a consultant up until his death in 1994. But more than that, he also served as a technical editor for the Journal of Nuclear Materials Management from 1974 up until once more his death. This man, William Alfred Higinbotham, bore witness to humanity's greatest evil, one he helped create, and spent the rest of his life trying to prevent it. And whatever it was that pushed him, whether it was guilt, shame, or duty, it didn't consume him. He found love, built a family, played the accordion, and could reportedly do anything with an egg, and lived a full life, all while doing his absolute best to stop the production of nuclear arms. That is worthy of respect. And while all he accomplished in life is more than enough for us to remember him by, William Higinbotham's influence on us extends to more than just his nuclear non-proliferation work. Though the man himself would most likely wave it off as unimportant to his overall legacy. But to us, and more importantly, yours truly, it means the world. In 1958, during his long stint in the Brookhaven National Laboratory, the lab would host an annual public exhibition for educational purposes. And while all that sounds exciting, the whole affair could be best summed up as posters on the wall guided tour. Boring, a sentiment William was often quoted saying about it. But this was soon to change. One day, William was reading through the manual of the lab's new computers and saw it had the ability to simulate basic physics, like bouncing. He thought he could make something to spice up the exhibits with. He got to work, and over the course of 2 hours, using all the skills he picked up over his life with physics and electronics, designed what was to become the world's first official video game, Tennis for Two. But technically it isn't. That distinction, as far as we know, belongs to the cathode ray tube amusement device built in 1948, a whole 10 years before Tennis for Two, though the game never saw public circulation. And after that, there was 1951's Nimrod computer that could play a centuries-old game called NIM. Then 1958's electronic tic-tac-toe called OX. It's a bit of a misconception that Tennis for Two was the first video game ever made. But while it wasn't the first, what it was the first video game to matter. What I mean by that is before it, video games were made for one of two reasons: academic and displays of what computers could do, to which they would then be implemented for various physics or mathematical based problem solver solutions like calculating ballistic missile trajectories. But on October 18th of 1958, to what was nothing more than William Higinbotham's genuine attempt to make others happy, he created the first ever video game for the intended purpose of entertainment. And what is a video game if not that? That's why Tennis for Two means so much. That's why it is widely considered the first. To quote the man himself, "It might liven up the place to have a game people could play and which could convey the message that our scientific endeavors have relevance to society." And it did, as Tennis for Two was a smash hit. People lined up to try it, and it was so popular, it was brought back the following year in the lab's 1959's exhibit, but with new inbuilt gravity simulations that could mimic the moon or even Jupiter's gravities. But here's the strange part. Despite the game's obvious success, no one saw it. No attempts were made to monetize or patent it. And it's not because William was shy or humble, as throughout his career, he has had as many as 20 patents to his name. He just genuinely felt it wasn't worth one, that the other displays was so boring. By contrast, of course it was popular, and missed how groundbreaking what he made was. But even if he did make a patent for it, it would have been with the government as the holder for it. But they too didn't care about it. And sadly, after 1959's exhibit, they dismantled it to use for parts elsewhere. A crying shame for historical preservation. I can't help but wonder what they would have thought had they the ability to see where it all would lead today, where some games make billions and are played by millions upon millions of us. The sheer potential they dismissed. William himself got to see some of it as he lived through the video game boom of the 1980s, and even played some with his children, though he claimed he was no good at them, and largely remained uninterested in what he helped usher in. But despite that, today many view him as the grandfather of gaming, and for good reason, being the man who unintentionally opened that door. And while one could argue that someone else would have eventually, the fact remains that it was him that did it, and that's why he's remembered for it. Though his son, William B. Higinbotham, has actively tried to dissuade this, stating that he would have preferred to be remembered for his nuclear non-proliferation work. And from what I have seen researching this man, I would agree with that statement. However, there is no reason we can't have both. William Alfred Higinbotham, thank you so much for all you've done, whether it be your efforts in nuclear armament restriction or in ushering in this little hobby we all have today. While your body may have passed, your memory will continue to endure. This has been Andy William Mackai. Mackai Lorien, out.